Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my co host, my friend Tommy Highway. Tommy?
Folks, I'm Tommy Highway. I want to thank everybody for coming out as always. I have a great show for you this evening, folks. We're bringing back a guest that we had on some weeks back. We had some connection issues, but he has such a powerful story to tell. Just had to have him back for you, folks. His name is Steve Bassett, and he is the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial related phenomena. Folks, it is our pleasure and my honor to bring you Steve Bassett. Steve, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Happy to be with you, gentlemen.
It's really good to see you again, Steve. Thanks for coming back on.
Absolutely.
Could you start out by telling all our viewers a little bit about yourself, your background?
I've been in the field now 26 years. And prior to that, I did this and that, what have you. Nothing particularly significant. Just another citizen paying the rent, moving forward. But I did get an education in science, physics degree actually, but didn't pursue an advanced degree, which meant my undergraduate physics degree was worth, well, $1.95 a cup of coffee. But I've stuck with science all those years. I'm sort of knowledgeable, and also was a big science fiction buff when I was a kid. So it didn't surprise me that at the age of 49, I really got attracted to this issue as something I really wanted to do. And I got involved in 96. I went to work as a volunteer with John Mack's organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Quite an experience. The legendary John Mack, which was a contact research project. So my initial introduction was at the high end, right? Contact.
Right.
But while I was there, I realized my niche. I realized what I could offer. And that was a political activist, which I really was. I mean, at heart, I've always been a political activist, but just at heart, I really didn't become a professional activist. And I understood that the problem with the issue, circa 1996, was pretty much the same problem it had been for decades prior. The ET presence was proven. The evidence was quite obvious. It's extraterrestrial. So why hasn't something happened here? Why isn't this a huge matter before the public, being covered by journalists, taught in the universities, and all that? The government would say because it's not proven. The journalists would say it's not proven. Right? It didn't prove it. No, it's proven. So why? It's political. The what I call the truth embargo had been in place since 47, 8, 9, 50. And that embargo was a political decision that the American people can't know this. We'll deny it. We'll undermine efforts to prove it if we can. We'll put out propaganda, disinformation, we'll ridicule, whatever it takes. For national security reasons, they don't have a need to know. They don't have a right to know, and probably can't handle that truth. These are the classic phrases that we know. It was a political issue. Therefore, it needed a political solution. And I knew Washington pretty well. Lived there off and on all my life. Had a place to stay. And I said, I'm going to Washington. I'm going to engage this politically, which was a good thing because nobody else really had. I mean, not in any structured way. There had been some governmental interactions, a couple of hearings in 68, 66. But no. For instance, there was no registered lobbyist on the issue. There was no political action committee on the issue. There were no conferences on the politics of the issue. So I had the field to myself. I said, hey, I got the whole field. I'll just go out in the field, take the football with me, and run up and down and score touchdowns. So I went to the Washington area, set up an office, and registered as a lobbyist immediately under the name Paradigm Research Group. Got a number of organizations. The reason it was called Paradigm Research Group is I had a number of organizations out there. They're almost all gone now, but that let me for free register on their behalf. Well, for free, you can get that. So a group of organizations, I'm registering on their behalf as a lobbyist, thus Paradigm Research Group. I'm not a research organization. I knew what would happen. And what happened was that when the registration turned up in the files of the paper. They check all these things. Washington Post, the Times, all of them check these registrations. They're very important. A lobbyist can turn up at any time representing a major corporation in another country, and the media want to know that, right? Want to follow up. And so when mine came across representing the need for congressional hearings on the extraterrestrial presence and so forth, that got their attention. It didn't take too long. The Washington Post sent out a reporter, interviewed me at length, big photo, put it up, huge article in the front page of the business section of the Washington Post, which is pretty good. Worst photo I ever took. I mean, it's up on my website, but don't look for it. It's terrible. So that was it. That gave me a platform to start from. It gave me a basis. It's that simple, right? And thus began my political engagement of the issue with zero resources, free office, free place to live, but zero resources. Then I established the Political Action Committee X-PAC, first one of its kind. I launched the website, which was, well, it wasn't bad for 1997, but let me tell you, I kept it way too long. I should have put that baby away and gone modern, but whatever.
I think I actually saw that website today. It was a red writing on it.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was done. Yeah, it was an old one.
It was done in front page. All right. Anyway, then I ran for Congress, and I was the first person ever on a congressional ballot, November congressional ballot, talking about the extraterrestrial issue. Another first. Remember, I'm on the football field all my just running back and forth, right, scoring my own touchdown. Then in 2004, that was 2002. 2004, I launched a series of conferences called the X conferences, the exopolitical conferences. The first exopolitical conferences, I believe, held, and absolutely the first ever held in the Washington area. I held 6 of those. Every one was followed by a press conference at the National Press Club. All right. Again, trying to bring the issue to D.C., to the media in D.C., and I've continued on from there. And so that's, again, I didn't have many resources, so the degree of impact I could have was limited. I did not have the gravitas to be able to just walk into offices on Capitol Hill. I mean, if I went up in Capitol Hill, I got an 18-year-old intern. Okay, but again, I did some things, but again, it was more like a statement of, yeah, there's a lobbyist now, pay attention, so it was limited in that regard. But the one thing I did that did work is that I recognized that I was not going to be in a position anytime soon to be a real lobbyist. First of all, I was never going to have money where I could go and say, look, I just donated to your campaign. I may be able to donate again. Can we talk? Whatever the hell. No, I didn't have that kind of money. Don't know if I would have done it anyway. That's the kind of stuff that's destroying the United States. But I understood that in America for some time now, the way you interact with Congress is through the media, not in their office, right? You got an issue, you get it in the media, and you point out that they need to address it. Or they bring up some political angles and so forth. You use the media to get to the representatives. And so I really started gauging the media. All right, that I lobbied the media, and that's the approach I took. It was inexpensive, it's cheap. I can talk. Boy, God knows, can I talk? So since 1997, I have done 1,400 interviews on this subject, more than any living person, I believe, pretty sure, maybe more than anybody ever on the subject. I have generated over 500 articles. I say generate. There are 500 articles that have been written about me and PRG. Okay, so I've gotten the issue and PRG into 500 articles: New York Times, Washington Post, New York Post, New York Daily News, LA Times, Chicago, all of them, right? And a whole lot of small ones. Okay, great. And I help to get the issue in general into the media. In 2006, I started chronicling, to the extent possible, the mainstream media coverage of this issue, which is important. There's a whole lot of non-mainstream coverage of this issue, believe me, on every conceivable small news thingy or whatever, quasi-news thingy, countless. But it's the mainstream coverage that kind of tells you where things are, where the media is, where the country is. And so far, I've linked on my website 13,000 of those articles. But I really couldn't link many articles prior to 96 for sure. Really didn't start till about, because it's all through the internet, right? I wasn't going to go around the country to newspaper offices, go in, get the microfiche, take that, make a copy. No, I mean, that would cost millions of dollars. The total number of articles that have been written on this issue, though, I estimate in the 30 to 40,000 range in the United States, English language, rather. That is a huge amount of coverage. And when you do go back, there are places where I can look at some of this coverage. I can't really archive it on my site. The coverage of this issue has been not bad. The mainstream media has covered this issue since 1947 on. There was kind of a gap there, 47 to 52, but they've covered it. They said this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened. And they've continued to do that right up into the present day. 40,000 articles. That doesn't even count the foreign language articles. Okay. Right. So, okay, then why? And so in other words, and of course, I've engaged scores and scores of reporters, right? Dealt with them, talked to them, and always available for an interview. So again, I'm working the media. It's a slower process, but that's my forte, right? I wish I could. Lately, I have the last couple of years, I haven't been able to do it as much as I want, but the last couple of years have been strange. But in any event, that's what I did. So the upshot is that the media is slowly coming around. But to answer my earlier question, with all these articles being written, tens of thousands of them, surely this issue would have matured and come to a resolution. The political problem would have been solved. And why not? And the answer is actually fairly straightforward. The answer is the media early on understood that the government was embargoing this issue. Either they inferred it, or they were given very explicit information that was the case, one way or another. In the early days, it would have been very easy to get in touch with a newspaper publisher or the head of one of the 3 only networks and say, look, we'd rather you didn't go there, okay? I mean, we'll keep it within bounds. Or we'll pull your license, right? But in any event, they've known, all right? And they've gone along with it. And the reason they did it was primarily, it was a national security-based matter, and they understood the implications of that. And our government was very well liked back in the 40s and 50s. I don't know if you were alive then, but there was a time when our government was actually very well liked. And they felt that it was the right thing to do. So what was the decision they made? The decision they made is, we're going to write about events that take place, conferences and sightings and things, right? Because they are happening, and if we don't write about them, that really is bad journalism, and it's going to be obvious. What we won't do, and we have the ability to do, is we're not going to investigate it. We'll leave that to MUFON and whoever else has got time on their hands. So we're not going to send out any investigative reporters to start going through the trash cans at the Department of Defense, right? Or try to see if we can dig up some witnesses or quote whistleblowers that talk to us in garages in Roslyn, right? Get to spit the poop and break some investigative story. No as in no, period. And by not doing that, they allowed themselves to float on the surface of the issue, doing real journalism, but not upsetting our very good government's national security need, which is to keep this issue embargoed. And that policy pretty much still remains the same, okay? And here's the proof. In 2017, as you know, the To the Stars Academy was launched, and then the New York Times was provided some very interesting information by Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, including gun camera clips from the Nimitz case. And they went, that's pretty good. That's quite a story. And the Times knew that this was all going to go public. And so, and this was 2017. The issue, it continued to advance slowly but surely through all those decades. They said, well, we're going to do a story. And they did. They checked out the information they received, and they published 2 stories. The first one was on the net, 2017, December 16th, and the second one was in print, December 17th, 2017. These stories hit like bombshells, particularly the gun camera footage, just went up on the internet site, right? And so there it was. And can you even guess how many people in the world have seen at least once one of those gun camera clips that were released? Tic Tac, Go Fast, Gimbal. Total number of views, probably billions. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Big deal. Now, that was a huge story. That was 5 years ago. Where have the deep dive investigative pieces been? Where did they go? I mean, you get a story like that, and you don't get some reporters or your investigative pros out there digging, trying to find out more, trying to find out what the DOD knows or doesn't know, maybe finding witnesses. Big story. In other words, Woodward and Bernstein, baby. Watergate, baby. Nothing. Zero. And none of the other papers jumped in either. Washington Post, Washington Times, Wall Street Journal, pick one. Because that's the understanding. We will write it up, but we're not going to come digging through your files. We'll leave that to John Greenwald or Grant Cameron or NICAP or MUFON, or whoever the hell's out there, underfunded, no real substantial gravitas, but committed, serious, good people. Yeah, get what you can get. But we don't want the New York Times sniffing around.
So they're happy to profit from the story, but that's as far as it goes. They won't go any further with it. They won't actually invest any time, effort, or money into the investigative process, into the story itself. Interesting.
Clearly, they profited from the story. I do not believe they're going along with the truth embargo to profit from the story, because the truth of the matter is, if they had done investigative pieces, they would have made a ton of money. There would have been Pulitzer Prizes, right? So it wasn't purely profit, but yeah, have they profited from the story? Oh my God. Again, 40,000 articles, right? In the early days of the internet, certainly during the period of Mosaic, and then Google comes in 1998. During that period, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it was a common theme that came out, a common thing that you heard. The number 2 search term on all of the internet was UFO. Throughout the entire World Wide Web was UFO. And we all know what number 1 was, right? Okay. Sex. Okay. So it was UFO and sex, and then it was UFO. So the issue is spreading out on the net. But in what way? Websites. All right. So websites, these crude things like the one I put up, about it, right? And they were pretty crude, but they're huge. And so people are looking for the websites. Not really a threat to the government, just websites. It's out there. If you go looking for it, you'll find it. And I had one too. There were many. So it was relatively safe. And, but then that changed. What changed was, in 2006 came Facebook. 2004, rather, came Facebook. And then 2006 came Twitter. And thus, the age of the bulletin board and email flame wars, mostly bulletin board flame wars, right? Or email group flame wars, where you have like 20 people in an email group and they're insulting the hell out of each other, right? Which was no big deal. There was some UFO stuff being passed around on those boards, but there's no threat to the government. Then came social media. And guess what? Social media loves the UFO issue, the UAP issue. Right? And so now the fundamental subject is being spread even further. Of course, because The World Wide Web just didn't become a new means of interaction. It became a massive global means of the interaction. I imagine when the web gets started in the mid 1990s, people are fiddling with Mosaic. If someone had told them that 10 years later, an entity would be created that will eventually have 5 billion users, they would have thought, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. What? 5 billion users? Same platform? Same company? No, it's insane. Well, that's exactly what happened. We all know about that, don't we? And so 5 billion people are on a platform where anybody can share a UFO thingy or a UAP thingy. I hate to use UFO, but anytime they want and globally. And then if they do it in English and you're Chinese, you'll just translate the damn thing into Chinese and you'll read about it. So, off it goes. But again, even that was not an existential threat to the truth embargo. The newspapers would be that. Also, by the way, the main news channels, all right, at any time, any one of the major channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, right, and then certainly the cable news channels like CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, at any time, they could have said, this is the biggest story in history. Let's budget $5 million. We're going to put 8 reporters on it. And they have a license to go get anything they can find, talk to anybody they can, off the record, in underground. I don't care. Oh, yeah, they could have blown this out. But they chose not to do it, too, basically for the same reason the newspapers stood down. We'll cover it. It's a great subject. Gets lots of viewers. But we're not gonna fool with the government's truth embargo. Okay. And that still remains the case today. No investigations, in-deep investigations from any of the news networks, cable networks, or any of the major papers. But the totality of the coverage, which they feel they can do, is having huge impact and ensuring that the truth embargo's days are numbered.
Yeah, the truth embargo seems to be numbered as well due to the fact that we've heard rumblings about public hearings, accessible hearings to the public in regards to transparency on the subject, on the phenomenon. Right, Tommy?
That's right, and we're hoping that actually comes to fruition. But when you look back at the truth embargo as let's just say from the start of the whole phenomenon, there have been people that have been destroyed, discredited, people that have disappeared, had strange accidents, strange deaths, things like that. I did have one question though for you, Steve. When you first got started, you first got rolling as a lobbyist. What kind of challenges did you come up with? I mean, how many walls did you hit? I guess
the only walls I had were mine. The only barriers I had were my barriers, really. I just didn't have. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't have a career, substantial career, law degree from George Washington University, maybe 5 years working on the Hill. None of that. I was a citizen activist coming out of nowhere. I had no money. Right. So these are significant barriers. The government didn't have to put up any barriers for me. I'd already made it more than enough difficult to ensure that my impact would be slow. So no, but I will say this: from the beginning, I made several decisions which have served me well. One of them is I don't argue with people on the internet. It's not helpful. Just so I didn't participate in any of the flame wars. Though a lot of that was for fun. I mean, people are insulting each other for fun. I get it. But as you know, it also got serious too. There was some nasty stuff. And then as the social media developed, things got really nasty. I don't argue with people online. Might point something out, make a very mild comment, but debate, no. Debate, argument, no. Doesn't matter the subject. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Don't do that. Waste of time. Secondly, I made a decision that the goal is to get the resolution of the ET issue by political means, which means that you've got to get the United States government to cooperate or at some point yield on this truth embargo. Okay. And in order to do that, there's going to have to be some cooperation from within the national security structures, right, who are fundamentally opposed to the truth embargo. But I'm sure there are people inside that have always felt it was probably worth ending it, that the people had a right to know. So what are you going to gain by attacking the government relentlessly? You can point out their deficiencies from time to time, but to get in a pissing match with them, or just accuse them excessively of this or that, no. In fact, I took the attitude is that there are plenty of people, I believe, inside the U.S. government or the military intelligence complex that believe that people do have a right to know, and so I want them to see me as someone with a relatively righteous goal, who views them as citizens doing their job. Speak to them, not to the ones that are maintaining the truth embargo, and many of those think they're doing their job well too. And as a result, I think, and also I made another decision, which was transparency. I was going to take no effort at all to hide what I was doing. No security stuff, no encryption. Years later, not that long ago, I went on Signal and WhatsApp, not to hide from the government so much, but there were some people that would prefer to communicate that way. But for the first, I don't know, 20 years, I'm not hiding anything. And so the government knew exactly what I was doing. My phone was tapped from time to time. It was pretty obvious. But again, I didn't care. Right? I'm not trying to hide anything. And if they know pretty much what you're doing and you're not trying to hide anything, they're not going to really see you as a threat. It's really simple. Okay, it's not complicated. So that helped. And in general, my work is about change, paradigm shift, and fixing things and moving forward into the future. At heart, underneath my role as a disclosure activist, I am actually an anti-war activist, because what I do, I mean, you say, well, why do you care? I mean, why does it matter to you that the government has a truth embargo on ET issue? I mean, that's like saying, well, the government has a truth embargo on a great deal of our nuclear weapons programs, okay? Right? And a lot of other things like that, right? There's some people that don't like that, but most people understand that that's kind of necessary under the circumstances. So if someone says, I think they need to be more transparent in nuclear, why? I mean, there's got to be a reason, okay? So why am I not content with the government just maintaining the truth embargo as long as they feel it's necessary, all right? And it'll all work out in the end. Find something else to do, Steve, because this is not a how would you say, a luxury ride. It's not a luxury cruise trip I've been on for 26 years. I can tell you that. The reason is that war, which is the plague of the human race, which evolves naturally out of our fundamental origins. It's not some evil that was imposed on us by supernatural beings. We are basically violent animals, like most animals, but we're just better at it, and we're very smart, and we've got technology. So war has stayed with us and evolved, and went from being something that humans do probably more than they should, to being a cancerous plague on civilization. Right? But not that the past wasn't bad. You got Genghis Khan, who basically just swept across Asia, pretty much killing everybody. And he was asked about this. Why do you kill everybody in the town you just left? He says, I don't want any people growing up with grudges. Kill the women, the children, the cats, the dogs. In other words, we leave the children alive, they're going to grow up and be really mad. They're going to, I don't know, come at. So he killed everything. So I mean, that's pretty bad. That's pretty awful. So I mean, this isn't new. What's new is nuclear weapons. So essentially, in 1945, we dropped 2 nuclear weapons on our own kind, not simply to eliminate war-fighting apparatus or soldiers, but to make a point. So we included women and children, cats, dogs, everything, right? Incinerated. Okay.
Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Of course. And thus began the era of the nuclear weapon, which we could have handled a little better than we did. We didn't have to go the path that we went on. But from that point forward, the moment those bombs were dropped, we achieved, I guess, the penultimate outcome of our violent evolution. We finally had weapons that could pretty much destroy everything. In other words, somebody, if they wanted to, with the help of others, could be the Genghis Khan of the 20th century, of the 21st century, killing everybody. Nobody's left behind. In fact, the land isn't even livable, okay? You can't even walk into the cities. I mean, the ultimate goal, right? Absolute annihilation. That bomb was dropped in 1945 in August. My father was in the Pacific as a Navy corpsman serving. He was at Guadalcanal. He didn't get to leave until the bombs were dropped. The bombs were dropped. The surrender had to happen shortly thereafter. And then they had to muster hundreds of, I don't know, maybe 1 million. I forget how many troops home from the Pacific. Let me tell you, that wasn't easy. Most of them went through, a lot of them went through Australia. Okay. So they could process them, right? You just can't all show up in San Francisco, right? So he gets, so it takes time. He finally gets back to the San Francisco area, Mare Island Naval Air Station, and is immediately assigned to go to Bethesda, Bethesda, Maryland, Bethesda Naval Hospital. Now it's called the Reed Hospital, and he'd been in the Pacific for quite a number of years. So I don't think he was back in Bethesda more than about 45 minutes before he headed downtown to the Raw Bar, one of the popular bars down there, to I don't know, meet some ladies. You can appreciate that, right? 2 some years in the Pacific. My mother was a very attractive woman. They met right away. It was a very short courtship. And in March of 1996, you see how close we are here to Nagasaki? I get conceived. I was born in December of 1996. Only a couple months later, ET craft started turning up all around the world. And of course, the Cold War was just getting underway. Wasn't quite there, but it was getting there. It was in 1947 that Churchill came to U.S. and spoke at a university. I forget the university's name, where he coined the phrase "Iron Curtain over Europe." But it was in '95 when General Patton, which got him into trouble, went public to the press and said, "We need to invade the Soviet Union as soon as possible because they're the next enemy." He kind of got cashiered for that. But unbeknownst to a lot of people, Curtis LeMay, behind the scenes, not in public to the press, was advising using our nuclear weapons to conquer the Soviet Union. The Soviets had plenty of spies in the U.S. There were tons of communists in the U.S. The Soviet Union was our ally, okay? They were fighting the Nazis along with us. They lost 20 million soldiers, another 10, 15, 20 million civilians. So communism was not a problem in the United States. You get me? You following me? So there were spies everywhere. And so, yeah, they knew all about this. Curtis LeMay, Patton, all this stuff. So guess what? The basis for the next war was already well underway. And so by early 47, the Cold War gets underway. And I'm about 3 months old. And so the nuclear arms race is underway in 47. I think the Soviets dropped their first atomic bomb in 49 and then the hydrogen bomb 53. And so the Cold War The nuclear arms race and mutual assured destruction has been part of my life virtually from the day I was conceived. Right? I've lived every second of my life under mutually assured destruction. Now, some people were smart enough to not pay attention to that. So what? Hey, what will be, will be. I'm going to go to the Wharton School, get myself an MBA. I'm going to start a new company. I'll be worth 16 million bucks by the time I'm 28. That's not how I was wired. And I sometimes look back with some regret about that. I just wasn't wired that way. It bothered me. I was kind of obsessed with it. Now, part of the reason I was obsessed with it is because as part of the Cold War, meaning a war that was in name, not a hot war, but a Cold War, meaning we couldn't actually fight. Okay, you had proxy wars, and Vietnam was the first great proxy war. Okay, it started in 62, 63, and really started to pick up as I entered college in 64. So what do I mean by proxy war? Okay. We were fighting the Chinese communists, but we weren't fighting the Chinese. We were fighting China in Vietnam, North and South, right? So our soldiers were there. The Vietnamese, South Vietnamese were helping us, but we were fighting the North Vietnamese. That was the enemy, but the actual enemy was China. And you say, well, no. China stayed out of it. Actually, no. China gave billions of dollars of weapons to North Vietnam to fight us. In other words, we were fighting against Chinese weapons. There's a website, you can easily check this out, but the Chinese gave the North Vietnamese 1,080,000,000 bullets. I'm not making that up, okay? I don't know, 675 planes, 800 tanks, 16 million artillery shot, whatever. So they provided the weapons. The North Vietnamese used them, and we fought the North Vietnamese. It wasn't a fair fight. We slaughtered them, but we didn't have to fight China. It was a proxy war. It was a proxy war made possible by the Cold War and by nuclear weapons. Okay, without the nuclear weapons, we'd have had to fight the goddamn Chinese directly, like we did in Korea. All right, which definitely didn't go well, and we didn't want to do that again. So proxy war. I don't know why, but even though I was not, how would you say, a mature 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and I hadn't read that much about geopolitical affairs. I did watch a lot of news television. I was a military kid, so I sort of had a sense about war and military and read books and watched shows. But something was different. I figured out that was a proxy war. We were slaughtering Vietnamese because we couldn't slaughter Chinese. And we weren't even fighting. I mean, we were fighting Vietnamese soldiers. But the nature of the proxy war was that you had a license to do as much as you wanted. So we were also killing huge numbers of civilians. We were carpet bombing. So as I entered college in 1964, I was pretty much convinced that my government was the spawn of Satan. No better than the communist, no better than Genghis Khan, no better than any nation or any power that slaughtered people in order to get its way. This did not go well with my mental health. All right. Let's move forward to the future. That was 1964. Let's move forward 58 years. What's happening now? The United States is fighting Russia, but we can't fight Russia. So we're fighting in the Ukraine, or the Ukrainians are fighting Russia, rather, on our behalf, essentially, with our weapons. Billions of dollars of our weapons. It's exactly the same thing. All right.
Right.
Well, it's not exactly the same thing. It's not a twin, it's a fraternal twin. In Vietnam, our people, our weapons against the Chinese weapons. In Ukraine, it's the Ukrainian people and our weapons against the Russian people and their weapons. But it is absolutely a proxy war. Okay.
Steve, I have to take a step back and ask you, how does this directly tie in to the UAP phenomena?
Oh, does it tie in? All right. So the media, the press, the news, and huge numbers of people that worked in our government, in our military, and our national security, as well as virtually every college professor that ever taught at any school in the United States, right, have gone along with the truth embargo, allowing it to survive, allowing it to continue. Right? The efforts to really get rid of the nuclear threat, to end the Cold War, didn't work. Right? I mean, we haven't had a nuclear war. We have reduced the weapons from 86,000 down to about, well, you hear different numbers, call it around 20,000, which is, it's roughly the equivalent of, well, the guy only showed up at school with 100 bullets, he didn't show up with 10,000 bullets, so it wasn't so bad, was it? Bullshit. Right? Believe me, we have more than enough weapons to annihilate most of the human race. Okay. So, what's going on here? Here's what's going on. We're going to have a nuclear war. Again, just based upon the status of things, we're going to have a nuclear war. If it isn't tomorrow, it'll be next month. If it isn't next month, it'll be in 6 months. How do I know this? Because one, we've almost had nuclear war on a number of occasions, all accidents, not intentional, just so much stuff happening, so many moving parts, so much tension and stress. We've almost had launches of nuclear weapons on a number of occasions, but we got lucky, right? We were lucky. Oh, good, it worked. We're lucky. Let's don't do anything, and our luck will hold. Let's see, rolling those dice, because we're going to score every single roll. We'll never get knocked out, right? Okay. Meanwhile, over the last 20 years, the world has become increasingly less stable, not more. The weapons have gone down. World status has gotten worse. It's now so unstable, so complicated, they don't have enough supercomputers in Arlington to calculate it. It's like, I think they're overwhelmed. I don't think they have the slightest idea. There's that wonderful movie called
War Games.
War Games, where the supercomputers are going to do it, and nobody can control them. They know what the hell to do. And they solve the problem by demanding that the computer play a game of tic-tac-toe. And it starts doing that, but you can't win. So it's just going, and then it says there's no, and it shuts down. And they don't have the nuclear war. I hesitate to point out tic-tac-toe, right? Does tic-tac sound familiar to you? Little joke there. All right, now, so where am I going with this? That's a pretty bleak assessment. We're going to have a nuclear war. It's inevitable. It's soon. Well, I was saying that, by the way, for years. And people are just blow it off. Guess what? I've been following the Ukraine war pretty closely. I don't know about you. I mean, I have no family, no kids, no dogs, no cats. I don't even have a fish. All I do is watch cable news. I cannot count the number of times that a commentator, a journalist, a member of the Russian government, a member of the U.S. government has said in front of a camera, nuclear war is potential. It could happen. There's risk. This is unprecedented. We've never seen those statements said that way so much, so often. And the reason is because it's not good for public stability and normalcy. You don't want to upset people like that. So I believe me, they should have been talking like that more in the past, but they didn't. But now they are. Right? And the reason they're talking that way is because the chance of nuclear war is the worst it's ever been. And there are people inside our government, if you could talk to them privately, right? Absolute security. They had no risk of being exposed, and they told you what's going on, it would scare the holy shit out of you. See how serious this is?
No doubt, we're definitely going through some real serious times in our world right now, and I think I agree with you. I mean, at some point, I believe that the Russian president is unstable. There's something probably wrong with him. I'm not sure what's going on there.
He's dying,
but yeah, I think so too. But to get back on the subject of UFOs, yeah. So again, I guess if you can go a little bit further about what are some of the people that you met in Congress and things like that? I mean, when you were an activist, did you actually a lobbyist? How many of those people did you actually have contact with, and what were their reaction to you and in your request?
Not many. I could never get to the actual members. I get interns, some recent person. You never get to the members. This was early, man. They were talking about in the mid to late 60s, 1990s rather. So I went and lobbied the media. Right? Now, I have followed what politicians have said over the years. Believe me, I know a lot about what various politicians have said and so forth. The vast majority of them don't say anything. Nothing, zero. Can't talk about that. But some have. That's fine. Right. But to close the circle here, and the reason I was so intense about it is because it is that bad, and I am an activist and a truth advocate, and I don't like to play bullshit games about stuff. I don't want to say, well, let me put it this way. I don't want to upset anybody. Or, this might not get me an interview with them. Like, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. If you don't like it, tough. I got nothing to lose. Nobody controls me. I answer to no one. This is what I believe, and this is what I believe is true. So for those who are watching, who have children, grandchildren, expectations, or any hopes and dreams, something is going to happen real soon, or all of that is going to go away. And so you're probably thinking, okay, Steve, okay. You got me. Man, this is not good. What can we do? Well, let's see. Should we start an anti-nuke movement in the country? There already is one. It doesn't work. Could we start a anti-nuclear proliferation? We already have one. It doesn't work. Could we start some serious diplomacy? We used to. It didn't work. Now we don't do it at all. Can we stop building at least more weapons? Oh, no. We're building bigger, better weapons, hypersonic missiles. And, of course, let's not forget the Satan II. You got to give Russia credit for that one. They called it the Satan II. It is a massive MIRV hypersonic missile that if all of the 12 essentially the warheads in it were then dispersed as it's approaching an area. These are 10 to 20 megatonners. It could destroy all of France. All of it. No France left. And they're bragging about it. They just showed it off. They're so pleased. Meanwhile, North Korea is talking about its hypersonic missile and how well they're doing with that. So what? I mean, we're doomed, right? We can't do anything. Our politics here is become a gangrenous, toxic swamp. It's useless, right? It's amazing that our members of Congress can come together and decide who gets to go to the bathroom. Meanwhile, in Russia, we have a dying autocrat worth billions of dollars he can't take to the grave. I think he probably has cancer, Parkinson's, and he's trying to have one last fling of glory before he leaves. China, of course, still has nuclear weapons, but it's trying to play it cool. He hopes that there will just be a nuclear war between Russia and Europe and the United States, and China will be untouched, which could happen. In which case, China, with its 10 million person army and all of its weapons still intact, will take over the world. All right? They'll simply take it all over, and it'll be a Chinese world, and probably we'd be a hell of a lot better off. So what could possibly change this awful situation? One thing, and one thing only: We have to end the truth embargo. And the entire world needs to learn that there's an extraterrestrial presence and has been for some time. And they have advanced technology. And they're only a small portion of all the sentient civilizations in the galaxy. There's untold numbers of them, though that's not obviously been proven by our ET experience here, but anybody with half a brain or tenth of a brain would know that. So there is a whole galaxy out there. Things to do, places to go, things to learn. And so let's step back from this whole, I'm willing to drop a nuclear bomb in order to get a land bridge to Sevastopol. I'm gonna kill women and children so I can protect some of our native speaking people. Or let's carpet bomb all of North Vietnam, because if we don't, communism is going to spread down to Malaysia, and then eventually they'll come over here in their tiki canoes and take over California, or whatever bullshit argument they come up with. But no, we need to step back from that. Wait a minute. There's some very interesting possibilities here. Most of our silly pretenses and predilections and irritating gripes and now seem so trivial. You may say, is that possible? Well, if you can think of a piece of information more profound than confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence, particularly for those that are clueless about it, I want to hear it. Some say, no, it's the second coming of Christ. He comes back down and has some interesting messages to say. It would be a huge event. It would be absolutely massive for the Christian faith. They would be all worked up and wow and excited. Well, you know, Christ came once before. He was here. He had a pretty good message. Do you know how many wars we've had since Christ was crucified? Do you want to even count them? Do you want to know how many people have died in wars since Christ was crucified? So that Christ is coming back probably ain't going to cut it. Disclosure is the only way out of this godforsaken mess. And the government is still not prepared to do it. The government has no answer to the nuclear threats, no answer to situations like Ukraine, no answer to global warming, no answer to the floods. The drought that's going to destroy most of the Western America, or the massive famine that's coming. It's going to kill untold millions of people and create massive unrest. It has no answer to anything. I want you to think that, and ask you to give them billions of dollars every election cycle so that they can keep telling you that they have an answer when they don't, which gives people a false hope. Hey, I just contributed a bunch of money to the Democrats and Republicans. Wow, they're going to win the election and they're going to fix this. Really? No. Disclosure is the paradigm shift, the ultimate, most profound event in human history, and it has to happen as soon as possible. And guess what? It was on its way. It was in the Amazon truck. It was ready to be dropped off on our porch, right? We could open the package and start working with the whole thing, and except the very activity that is putting us at risk of nuclear war is preventing disclosure itself. In other words, it's like diseases. There are diseases that you can get. The nature of the disease actually prevents the ability to cure it, right? It's tied together. In other words, the only cure, the only treatment we have for that particular disease, the disease itself prevents the cure from working. That's a bad disease, and you never survive that one. That always takes you down. That's the situation we have now. Now, it's a little more complicated because, and I'm getting back to disease again, one of the things that has slowed down and prevented disclosure from happening a year ago, 2 years ago, was the worst pandemic in human history. You know, it's hard to get the attention of world leaders and others about UAPs when they're dealing with trying to prevent 20 million of their citizens from dying of a virus. And so what can you do? I mean, you have to wait. You have to watch that. And guess what? When I say that we have failed at nuclear, anti-proliferation, or just nuclear negotiations, or dealing with major crises. Guess what? We failed on the pandemic too. These things are like tests that the nature and science delivers up. The nature of the world delivers up. It's like a test. We see these tests in movies all the time. There's a meteor coming at us and it could destroy civilization. It's a test. Can you solve that? Well, in Armageddon they did, and in Deep Impact they sort of did. I think in the real life when a meteor is coming, we'd fail that friggin' test so bad. And so we're failing another test. It is this test, global pandemic test. We screwed it up. All right. Okay. It's not as bad as failing the nuclear war test, but it's still not good. So it slowed things down. All right. And now we have the worst challenge to mutual assured destruction ever. And that's the Ukraine war, where a nuclear weapon could get used at any moment. And guess what? You think you can actually go to the members of Congress or the key committees and say, look, now it's time to hold those hearings. We got the witnesses. We're ready to go. You put some things in law. The DOD is making adjustments. There's a lot moving on. Luis Elizondo was on every podcast that's known to be created. No. There's a war in Ukraine, you idiot. Okay? We're dealing with a potential nuclear problem here. Get the hell away. What can I say? And yet the disclosure is a thing that might prevent nuclear war. Let me tell you, activism is not easy. And if I had to do it all over again, I think I'd just become one of those local activists that are just trying to get the mayor of the city to upgrade the sanitation plant, right? Okay, just that. Just get the plant upgraded because the place is starting to stink. All right. Doable. Wouldn't take 26 years. No, I decided I had to go global issue. So that is the connection. Now, it took a while to explain it. I'll get better at that. And it's my fault. It's not my fault that you have a connection between a 75-year Cold War and the development of the worst weapons in all of human history and a 75-year of an ET presence that we will not formally acknowledge. And the two things are not they're not coincidental. The ET presence in the modern era is directly connected to the nuclear issue. And that has become not the only thing. They have things they're doing, right? A little shopping, little gardening, little hybridization, whatever the hell. They have other, but their principal reason for here is because of the nuclear weapons issue. How do we know that? Because the most important evidence we have that the government has absolutely ignored up until just recently, meaning they ignored it for 50 years. No, I know nothing. I don't know who you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about. I know nothing. Never heard of Robert Salas, Robert Hasey. Never heard of him. Nothing happened. It doesn't exist at all. Is the nuclear weapons tampering, in which extraterrestrial craft hover over nuclear weapons missile sites and turn the missiles off. Not once, but numerous times, which can't be done, theoretically. And they do it in Russia, and they did it in the Soviet Union. This is probably the most important evidence we have, and easily the most impossible issue for the government to deflect if it became an issue. Now, in Russia, when it comes to things like that, what you do is you just let it be known. You say anything, we'll kill you. And if we're really in a bad mood, we'll kill your family. Maybe your dog. We'll kill everybody. The United States can't do that. Okay. So in our country, we had a different approach, which worked because, again, the media has played ball. If the media plays ball, it's easier for the government to do things and not have to take you outside and kill you, which is a good thing. I'm kind of happy about that. So basically, the government said, look, we can't shoot these missile test commanders, right? Missile site commanders, right? These Air Force guys. We can't go on Facebook and destroy their reputation. We can't threaten their families. And the reason for that is if they did, it would get known throughout the military world. And I tell you, there would be a lot of officers, particularly former SAC-based officers, that would raise holy hell. And now you have a mutiny on your hands. So you can't do that. You can't buy them off. All you can do is ignore them and pretend they don't exist. And that's exactly what they did. I watched it happen in real time. There was nothing that they could say or do that the Pentagon would even acknowledge Philip Corso didn't exist. Bob Salas, never heard of him. Press conference of the National Press Club, I don't know about that. Another press conference, I don't know about that. So
Well,
these men who are now
Book was a joke.
been ignored. I'm sorry?
Blue Book was a joke. I mean,
Well, Blue Book, that's a whole different matter. Blue Book was shut down. That served but Blue Book was nothing the threat to the truth embargo than the nuclear weapons tampering evidence. I assure you. The nuclear weapons tampering is massively important. Robert Hastings, who is in ill health now, I hope he hangs on, wrote the definitive book, made the definitive documentary. It should have exploded on the New York Times, but the New York Times wasn't ready for that. Because for the New York Times to dive into the nuclear weapons tampering thing would have been a much bigger story than the Tic Tac. And the New York Times would have launched just a whole new thing, and the government would have been very unhappy, and they decided we don't want to do it now. So they stood down. They'll have to answer for that. Everybody's going to have to answer for a lot of stuff. New York Times is going to be asked questions. They're going to just look at you and go, oh, God, just shoot me now. Don't make me answer this question. So there you go. It comes down to that. Disclosure or nuclear war. Now, I put this meme out a long time ago. I created the paradigm clock, which is midnight is disclosure, back in 1999. I then paired it up with a doomsday clock a few years later and said, okay, we got two clocks here. Doomsday clock, midnight, nuclear war. Very respected. It's been going since 1947. It's staffed by a team of nuclear scientists. And when they change that clock, people pay attention. The paradigm clock is not so well known. I kind of managed it for a while, but it became unruly. But the concept is there. I mean, if we get disclosure, the paradigm clock goes to midnight. And so those two, I use these things all. I put them side by side, and I put them out from time to time. You can find them on the net. Which clock strikes midnight first? It's real simple. If the nuclear doomsday clock strikes midnight first, disclosure is no longer an issue. And those that are just really worried about it, oh, we can't handle the truth, religion will collapse, blah, 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 not an issue. No problem. If disclosure happens first, I can make a realistic case, and I would love to step out in front of a wonderful audience at Harvard or Yale or MIT filled with students and faculty and make that case intellectually to them, except they wouldn't even let me on the campus. Okay. It's like, no way we're going to have that on the campus. And so, and I've never spoken on a campus. Now, I think I spoke on one. Some students invited me just for a kind of a special thing. I can make that case that if the disclosure clock happens first, there is a realistic possibility that in the aftermath of the disclosure event, heads of state worldwide confirming the ET presence, government evidence all over the place, tic-tac stuff everywhere. Everybody's going, okay, yeah, of course it's true. We agree. Let's move forward. That in the aftermath of that event, the basis for shifting worldview, focus, and strategy away from let's have war until we kill everybody to maybe let's not have war. What do we gain by, gaining a few acres of territory when there's an entire galaxy we could soon be going to? I mean, what legacy is that? I mean, the Chinese can still be thinking about taking over the world. Let's say they do. Who gives a shit? The galaxy doesn't care, right? So what's the point? Okay. By the way, if the Chinese could take over the world, which is possible, then the ETs could come and kill them all. So they can't defeat the ETs. All they can do is make a fool of himself on the planet. This is true of everybody else that wants to take over the world. God bless them. And so I can make the case it's possible. Now, if you intellectually believed, really believed that your work has a legitimate possibility of solving the preeminent problem of our time, which, by the way, is not global warming. Not yet. It will be, trust me. Would that be motivating to you? Would you be willing to give everything to that? Would you be willing to sacrifice whatever? Right? I would say most people go, oh, sure. I mean, but a lot of people would say, well, first of all, it's nonsense. It's crazy. It's not true. It wouldn't work. It's not happen. You're an idiot. You're a fool. Disclosure is going to change anything. It's not going to be useful in terms of trying to renegotiate our way out of the Cold War and blah, blah, blah. And if they'll believe that and they'll laugh, and I don't care. I really don't care. Right? And I'll tell you something else. Not a single person has ever reached out to me in any way, shape, or form and made the case that that isn't a legitimate possibility. Nobody has even tried. Scour the internet. Try to find an article that says, look, disclosure cannot possibly impact the problem we face regarding nuclear arms and nuclear war. Nobody's ever written that.
Well, I think clearly it would make everybody, every human, every government, every entity in this world take a step back. And when we realize that we are, in fact, not the top of the food chain, that the problems that we have are petty compared to what's really going on, in the cosmos. What if the rumors are true, there is some sort of galactic federation out there, but we're the hillbillies. Okay. I mean, we're primitive bipedal species and you're right. Basically the only thing that we've accomplished is to be able to kill each other. That's true. But that being said, I mean, it's a push to move forward. We still have to have the kind of politicians and scientists and people and men of courage, frankly, like Lou Elizondo, to step forward and disclose this information to us and just, let the chips fall where they may. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Well, there are people that are pursuing disclosure like Lou and Chris and others and Danny Sheen and so forth. And that's good. It's helpful. But until we get it, I mean, trying to get disclosure ain't going to save us. Right. It ain't. Right. You have to get it. So the work goes on.
Okay, I have to intercede here. According to Lou Elizondo, who we just recently interviewed, disclosure on the existence of UFOs has already occurred. What hasn't occurred is the transparency on where they're from, who's operating them, what their intent is, and what their agenda is.
That's a semantical issue, and I get it. First of all, disclosure means different things, different people.
Right.
One of the roles of the activist is to clarify language. You have to clarify language if you're going to bring people together in common purpose.
Right.
So when I say the word disclosure, I'm always using it with a capital D, proper noun. Okay, not small d.
Right.
You kind of know what that is. Most people know what that is. That's going on all the time. It's going on right now with this show. Okay.
Right.
Disclosure with a capital D is not the same thing. It is a proper noun, and it means the formal confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence by heads of state.
Right. That has not occurred.
It has not occurred. When those words come out of the mouth of a head of state of a nation that has significant impact, we all know who they would be. That is the disclosure event. And I assure you, once the first head of state, say it's the U.S., makes that statement, which will be backed up, I assure you, by information from our military intelligence complex, like the Tic Tac stuff. They've got more videos like that. I don't think you're shocked at that. They have thousands of them. That people go, okay, you got it. That's true. That's disclosure. That's the only one. So when Lou says disclosure's already happened, he's using a different word. He's using a different definition of the word. He's certainly not using it with a capital D. So again, so within his language, the disclosure that he's talking about is not going to prevent nuclear war. It's just that, it's like the civil rights movement was not going to end segregation in the South. They could have continued to move and move and move and move. But you know what ended segregation in the South? The Civil Rights Act ended segregation in the South. Okay. Same thing with disclosure. We can do this process indefinitely. It isn't going to get disclosure. And without disclosure, the nuclear war issue will not be affected. It's not going to be impacted. Look, given enough time. Look, the whole disclosure issue is enlightening and interesting, and people, I think, expands their thinking. That's fine. And there are a lot of other things that are expanding people's thinking. We are sort of evolving in some ways, though right now I think we're devolving. But one can make a case that given enough time, the human race would evolve to a level or a worldview that just simply makes this kind of war, any war, inappropriate. And we have evolved in various ways about various things, okay?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the nuclear physics doesn't allow for that. In other words, we have the weapons. We already can use them. We don't have 500 years to evolve a worldview that makes war irrelevant. That ship sailed a long time ago. We don't have to blame ourselves, just blame science, just blame physics, all right? That's what it is. We cracked the atom in the early 20th century, and we have nuclear weapons in 45 years. How much do you think the human race evolved in 45 years? So that's just the way it is. So we have to have something much more dramatic than an evolution of consciousness. But I want to get back to something that Tommy said. I actually have a different view of the human race, a slightly different view of the human race. And I always enjoy saying this. One, I believe that most people that go there, that want to talk about that, tend to underestimate the human race and overestimate the extraterrestrials. Just saying, okay? Just throwing it out there. The human race is 9 billion people. Okay, fine. You can step back far enough and look down, and all you see is a blue ball that you know there's 9 million people down there. It looks pretty serene, safe, whatever. And then as you get down closer and closer and you get into the granular stuff, you're starting to see some turmoil and issues and what have you. Understandable. If you land at a particular spot, there's a series right now that's starting to get some better reviews. It started off terrible. It's called The Man Who Fell to Earth. Jeddifer is like a fantastic actor. I'm going to eventually watch this series. But say you just plop yourself down in one spot in the planet at random. There might be some people sitting around, not doing much, okay? Maybe having a couple of beers. And you're going, well, that's not very impressive. Or you could drop down in the middle of the MIT campus at lunchtime, and there's all these students around talking high-level science. Oh, that's interesting. Here is how you look at the human race if you're an extraterrestrial. You view the human race as status based upon the most advanced people in it. The smartest, the cleverest, the most inventive. Their level of thinking, understanding, and so forth. Understanding that not all of the species is at that level. But you don't have to have all of the species at that level in order to advance into the galaxy, right? And I like to use the basketball analogy. If you give me two choices of a team to take to the NBA Finals, and one of them has, and I forget how many players are on a team, what is it, 12, 15, whatever the hell, and you give me a choice between one team that has 15 mediocre players and another team that has 5 fantastic players and 10 unbelievably bad players. I mean, they're just terrible. I'm going to take the team with the 5 fantastic players and the 10 terrible players over the 15 average players. Because if those 5, even 4 of them can stay in the game, they're going to win, all right? So you don't judge a team on the totality of the players, you judge a team on the best players, and then you get into the supports, the same way with civilizations. At our best, humans are extraordinary. 8-year-old kids who can play Beethoven's sonatas, eidetics who can remember every page of a book they've just read, people that do advanced science in their head, savants that can do mathematics that only computers can do in their head, creative geniuses, right? And on and on and on. The masters of science, philosophers that can give you entire lectures, and I've been to a couple of those where you didn't understand a single word they said. That is the cutting edge of humanity. Our ability to create, to understand, to implement is extraordinary. Now, it would be wonderful if everybody in the human race had those abilities. Nature doesn't work that way. Every life has some value. Every life is an opportunity. And every life should be considered important. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about how do you assess an advanced civilization if you're an extraterrestrial. We are on the verge of interstellar travel. We already have the physics forming right now. You can find examples on the internet if you look close enough, and that's just what's in the public domain. The rumors are rampant. We're closing in on interstellar travel. What does it mean? We're closing in a way to move from point A to point B, but not relativistically and not Newtonian, but rather in another way. And people go, oh, that's crazy. What? What? There were people there was a time we couldn't fly. And then we figured out the way around walking. Okay, this is not that hard. And not to mention the fact that we already know ETs are doing it. So we know it's possible and our science is moving. We're going to be able to have interstellar travel this century.
Right.
Assuming we don't have that.
Quantum.
Okay. How about implants in the brain that allow us to download like the Matrix? I mean, I could go on and on and on. The science that we're involved in is extraordinary and dangerous,
right.
but it is extraordinary. Okay. So we are an extraordinary species. If you look at the ETs, the way they act, what they do, they're not overly impressive. Okay. They're not that magnificent. They die. We know that. They're doing a lot of genetic research, which is probably pretty advanced, but people have been on the craft seeing some of this go on. They use instruments not dissimilar from what we have. They do in vitro development in glass containers. We can do that too. Their craft are pretty cool, but basically we could almost build something like that. You know? Where's this extraordinary, unbelievable 10 million year advantage? Oh, I believe there may be extraterrestrials out there that are a million years ahead of us, assuming that any civilization or species could last that long. I mean, there's so many reasons why that would be hard to do. But let's say there are. Let's say there's a species of ETs out there that's a million years more advanced. I would make the case that they would would have no interest in being here. Okay? Because when you're that advanced, it's just like, you know, I'm not going to go. Why am I going to go hang out with these people? But remember, it's a big galaxy, countless civilizations. The ones that are going to visit here are the ones that are closest to us. It's like the lunch table in high school. You remember that? Right. You know, everybody remembers the cafeteria in high school. The people that sit together at the table are the ones that have things in common. Okay? And there are some people who are so uncommon to you that they're never going to come and sit at your table. And so again, I don't think they're necessarily that advanced, but they're pretty cool. So if I'm right, then the distance between our civilization and their civilization may not be that wide. And so, post-disclosure, post-get rid of the nukes, the ETs might be very comfortable with interacting with us because we're no longer a threat to ourselves and we're no longer a threat to them. We might be able to hang out with them. Does that mean we're joining the Galactic Federation? I don't know if it's a Galactic Federation. It was a name that Roddenberry came up with, for crying out loud. And whatever it isn't called that. But we know that they work together because different ETs turn up together in the same craft. I mean, this is not difficult. If you go to Hawaii, there's like a number of different races there, right? That are actually in Hawaii at the same time. You got your Asians, you've got your African Americans, you've got Aleuts, whatever the hell, and you've got the fine Caucasians. So yeah, clearly, if you're coming to the same place and you're in the same craft, obviously there's some sort of an arrangement, isn't there? Which means there's some sort of alliance. It may be a very intense one. It may be loose. I don't know. The point is they're working with each other. Therefore,
they're collaborating.
They're collaborating. And so if we were to acknowledge their existence and they went into open contact with us, what would prevent collaboration?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Right.
So, and if they were going to collaborate, what do we have to offer? It's a good question.
That's just it. Probably very little, although they do seem to be very interested in our genetics, our DNA. That seems to be one of the things that a common theme in abduction stories, if you will.
Absolutely. The one thing we have to offer is a biosphere unique from all other biospheres in the galaxy.
Right.
There is no other planet that has a biosphere the same as ours.
Sure.
Right? No, it's impossible.
Also, in regards to the biosphere, a lot of the resources actually indicated in ancient history, human history, where supposedly beings came down for some of our resources like gold and other minerals.
I'm aware of those stories. I don't have a lot of confidence in those. I mean, look, it makes sense. I mean, early people are trying to understand what the hell are you doing here, right? Okay, and they're trying to explain it. I get it, but no, I don't think so. You want to know why? Let me tell you something. We've got some asteroids in our asteroid belt that have enough gold, right, to drop the value of the dollar to like 1/10 of a cent. Mm-hmm. If they needed minerals, they could fly around. I mean, they can go get them anywhere. The one thing we have is water, but I tell you, there's tons of water in out there, plenty of water. In the Kuiper belt, you got all the ice bodies, so they can get water anywhere they want. Oxygen. What can I say? Everything we have, they can get elsewhere. Now, the one thing we have they can't get elsewhere is genetics. Mm-hmm. Okay, they can't go anywhere else in the galaxy and find a lizard with the exact genetics of a lizard on our planet. Now, if they have taken DNA earlier and out there and they've been actually breeding lizards or whatever, there might be a lizard. But let's assume they haven't done that. I actually believe they have, but mm-hmm. It's unique. But certainly, you know how many billions of species have come and gone on this planet? I mean, millions, but it may even be billions. So, every one of those is another set of RNA. So the vast majority of all RNA life in existence is gone. But they've been around a long time, haven't they? And so they may have been collecting samples of species for hundreds of thousands of years. And if that's true, whoa, think about that, right? So think of the Earth as a massive DNA, RNA factory, all right? Creating our own special brand constantly, all the time. And if you're an extraterrestrial species and you happen to think that genetics and life is pretty important and cool, you're going to drop in, right? And you may gather what you can. So if they weren't looking for gold, if they were here, it was about DNA. And by the way, if as you look at the ancient evidence and so forth, there is a couple of threads like gold, but almost all of the threads are genetic, right? If you watch your Ancient Aliens, you'll find that the vast majority of all the evidence back there connecting to ETs somehow has a genetic connection. That's the gold that they probably want. Though I'm looking forward to asking them for sure, okay, what's going on? But I think it's genetics. Now, but there's also something else. Again, what do we have to offer? Our future. We have to offer our future. Why do a pair of parents invest so much time in a child? Right? The kid can't do much, maybe cut the grass, right? Can't really earn a living. Why do they care? Well, one reason is there is a genetic evolved connection between parents and children. It's built into our our emotional structure, our pituitary gland, whatever. And so, yeah, there's a bond there. Okay. But even adopted parents will have a very strong desire to take care of the child. What are they taking care of? Why the interest? The child's future. The child is a potential adult with possibilities and things that they can do and provide, and they want that future to happen. Why wouldn't an extraterrestrial species be somewhat protective and interested in our future? What could we be? What could we achieve? What interesting things can we provide? Wouldn't it be a shame if my kid went and got drunk and drove his car off a cliff. That would be unfortunate. So I'm going to work to try to prevent him from doing that. So there's that, our future. Okay. And there's also the possibility there's a genetic connection, but, don't need to go there. And then there could be reasons we don't even know. But we know this. They're here. They've been here a long time. And so whatever the reasons are, they're pretty strong reasons. And, there's a lot of things to learn in this world. I mean, there's enough information in this world that 1,000 lifetimes you could not possibly cover it. Right? So you get to learn a little of this and a little of that. I know a few things. What in this world that we could, quote, learn about that could possibly compare to what an extraterrestrial could tell us? What we could learn from an extraterrestrial?
Well, absolutely. They've been there, done that. They could show us all kinds of new sciences, new energy sources, things of that nature. No doubt about it. And, obviously they have this technology, field propulsion systems and things that we can only dream of because we know for a fact that they're coming here on a regular basis. Again, we have video. The military, to your point, has been very, very strongly investigating this, and they probably have been for decades. They've probably seen them as a threat for decades. But that being said, listen, Steve, what a very, very great talk tonight. We really appreciate you coming out on the show. Everybody out there that's in the chat and watching, just thanks for coming out and supporting us, folks. We really appreciate that. Tim, do you have any last words this evening?
No, I just want to thank Stephen for being so out there and open with us, because the truth is what everybody needs to hear. And like Esmeralda said in the chat, the truth will set you free. So I do believe in that. And I am praying for the day that alien life form disclosure happens, so it will change our world paradigm. Because when I saw a UFO for the first time, up close and personal, it
Changed your
changed
paradigm.
my world paradigm. Yes.
Well, I've heard that many times. In the meantime, as we wait for disclosure, gentlemen, cross your fingers and hope that while Vladimir Putin, bless his stony heart, is recovering or under anesthesia for the operation he's about to get, that the government changes in Moscow. It's a perfect opportunity. It's the one thing that could prevent this fiasco from finally blowing up. I'm not wishing anything awful on him, at least not publicly. But he is going to go under the knife, and he is going to be in anesthesia. He's already assigned, quote, the authority of government to, a hardline intel guy. But nevertheless, the opportunity is there for a peaceful transition of government. And that's the only thing, folks, peaceful or otherwise, that's going to prevent this latest fiasco from turning into a real nightmare. So keep your fingers crossed. All right, guys, gotta go. Take care. Until the next time. Love your logo. Love your CGI. Fantastic. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
All right. Well, again, just want to thank everybody for coming out. This was we talked about a lot of different subjects this evening than we normally cover on the channel. But however, it was very interesting. I want to thank everybody for hanging out there with us, and again for coming. And Tim, brother, just go ahead and lead us out.
Okay, thank you to everyone. Thank you to all of our joined members. One person I want to mention is Dab6 Gaming. He signed up recently. Very appreciative of him doing that, and or her for that matter. If you're interested in joining the channel, it's $1.99 per month. You get cool badges, emojis to use in chat. If you go higher in tiers, you get access to free merchandise. So check us out and join the channel. And we have a very special guest coming up on the 12th of May, Caroline Corey. She is the director, writer, and producer of Ancient Aliens. She is also a co-host on The Unexplained with William Shatner. She is going to be talking about her groundbreaking new film called A Tear in the Sky, which is going to be released on May 3rd. And she's going to release exclusive footage on our channel on the 12th of May. So that will be a Thursday when we normally have a UFO Men production. We're going to be doing a UFO Man live that night. So we hope to see you then. Thursday, this next week, we will be having a regular UFO Men presentation. And I think on Saturday, we have Donald Schmidt. So come check us out. Or no, we got Jim Goodall and Lynn Wallington. So come check us out, and we'll see you Saturday. And as always, from Tommy and myself, good evening.